Well, thank you very much for being here. Welcome to this morning's webinar of the ABCs of 360 Feedback, hosted by myself, Costa Antonio, coach and consultant at People Insight, and Gareth Phillips, Chief Tech Officer here at People Insight. It's a 30-minute session, just going through some of the basics. The webinar is being recorded and will be shared with everyone afterwards. We're here to help. If you have any questions, let us know, use the chat box feature, and we'll get back to you either now or later. And lastly, let's make this interactive. Keep the comments coming in, share your reactions, especially when we ask a question, share any observations, any learnings, things that you're doing yourselves that you want to share and can share, please do. We love learning from different people as well. Now, for those of you meeting us for the first time, we are People Insight. We're an employee experience specialist. Our mission is to be the most actionable employee experience platform powered by people, and we achieve this through three main channels. So one, platform. How do you capture data and turn it into something impactful and meaningful? And Gary's going to be showing you a bit of that later on when it comes to 360. People, so having the right expertise on ground, supporting you from the very beginning, designing the program, managing it all the way to supporting and coaching your managers in using that data. And thirdly, very important one, we are dedicated and committed to action. So that means we love data, but we don't like data just for the data's sake of it. It's about how do we use that data and turn it into real impactful action that's going to lead to an improvement, in this case, effectiveness of leadership and management positions. We work with a number of different organizations, different sizes, small, medium, large, different sectors, different countries, all unique, but all the same in that they're aspiring to exceptional culture to drive exceptional performance. Now, today's session is about the ABCs of 360. So that's A, awareness. What is it? What challenges does it solve? The B, bringing it to life. So that's where Gareth will work some of his magic and show you what the platform looks like. And C, it's about the change. So back to my point around commitment to action. Well, how do we use this 360 data into meaningful action and making it impactful? Now, when you were signing up and when people joined, they were posed with this question: which best describes your current situation? 58% said they were exploring 360 for the first time. 25% said they were looking to enhance or change the existing 360 platform or program or approach. And 17% said they were looking to connect the 360 with their wider listening strategy. In fact, if we can use the chat box feature now, because I am curious, for those who've joined Exploring 360 for the first time, please share your thoughts on why, what's made you right now want to learn about 360 or look into it. Those who are looking to enhance or change their existing program, tell us about what is it that's not currently working and what are you looking to improve on. And those that are looking to expand it and connect it with the wider listening strategy, tell us what you're planning to do there. So let's crack on with the A, that is awareness. Now, probably most of the people on this call currently run an employee survey or some survey, and they capture different aspects of the employee experience itself, from engagement, well-being, belonging, joiners, leavers, psychological safety, change management, you name it. Regardless of what you're measuring or what component of employee experience you are measuring, we know, and we've seen, and you've probably seen this as well, line management and leadership always comes up time and time again as an influential factor that really drives these focal points. And some of this is common sense. We know that people often don't leave organizations, they leave managers. There's often a lot of truth in that. We know with good managers, and by good, we don't necessarily mean managers and leaders who are overly nice and super friendly and well-liked, but they excel in their role in what they're doing as a manager or leader. But we know when there are good managers, good leaders, productivity is good, retention is good, engagement is high, revenues are good and tend to be better. And the opposite is the case if manager is not performing. So bad managers, we know productivity is low, people don't want to be there, we know there's a lack of employee engagement, and ultimately performance and revenues drop as well. So improving this aspect, improving leadership effectiveness is going to be vital to any organization. And I think this image here of Johari's window, so it's an old school model, but I love it. I think Johari's window does a great job in explaining the importance and the benefits of 360. I'm just going to use it now to articulate the point. If we look at the top left quadrant around the open self, this is the aspect we all have. We all have an open self. It's the part of me that I know about myself and the part of me that others know about me as well. So for instance, if I love to collaborate with others and get involved in different cross-team projects, I always put my hand up, for instance. I told my manager about this and I enjoy this part of my role. That's part of my open self. It's known to everyone. Hidden self is the aspect that's not known to others, but known to me. So for instance, even in my job, let's say if I do lots of presentations, I stand up in front of crowds or even do webinars, I might actually feel nervous before these sessions. I might even lack good sleep the night before, but no one knows this. I haven't mentioned it. My manager doesn't know about this. Unless I mention it to my manager, there is no way of improving on it or working out a development plan with my manager. So revealing it, self-disclosing, it becomes part of the open self. And then I can sit down with Kate, my manager, and talk about what we can do around this. Either focus on it more, less, put some development plan in place if I wanted to. The blind self is the aspect we all have as well, which is things I don't know about myself or not aware of, but others do. So for instance, I may interrupt people in meetings. I may, I don't know, being from a Mediterranean background, use my hands a lot when expressing myself in presentations and all these gestures. I won't know unless someone says, Costa, do you know that you kind of wave your hands a lot when presenting, or you interrupt Gareth a lot when you're in meetings with him? I won't know unless someone mentions it. And once it's mentioned, that blind self, that aspect moves into the open self. I can work on it. The unknown self is all about self-discovery. We're not going to go into that. That could be a whole day's webinar of discussion, of getting deep with philosophy and spiritual elements, etc. So I encourage you all to go self-discover, but for now, we're going to park that bit and focus on that blind self. We really want to shrink that blind self box. The more we shrink that, the more we can work on ourselves and improve management effectiveness and leadership. So how do we do that? Well, feedback, of course, is a very key answer to that. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, we get feedback already from our employees' surveys. Do we really need another platform, another mechanism to gather more insight and more feedback? There are differences between a survey and a 360 feedback program. So starting off with perspective, from a survey, it's normally from a single point. So if you are asking questions about my manager, if you're asking questions about leaders, it's often coming from that one point of view. With 360, you're going to get multiple raters. You're going to get an all-rounded picture and complete picture of how someone is performing and behaving and leading. So for instance, the feedback could come from one's manager, could come from peers, direct reports. There's also another category we have, which people normally invite customers and external stakeholders. We even had in a briefing session, I had someone ask me, I think it was a chap, he asked me if he could invite a family member. I think it was his wife to the 360 feedback session. No idea why someone wants to invite their spouse. In fact, let's have a bit of fun. Anyone who thinks it's a good idea to invite your spouse and partner to a 360 feedback, thumbs up. And thumbs down if we have, not sure if we have that as an emoji, or shock face, yes, if definitely not, and a bad idea. Then there's the depth. The depth is how deep you can go. So with a survey, you get an understanding of high-level things, but with 360, you can get far more detailed with the behaviors. You can get very tangible with the specific behaviors that a manager or leader can walk away with and work on and improve on. You don't get that depth with some surveys. So that's where the 360 is very helpful, very tangible. Also within depth, with lots of the partners we work with, we align the 360 assessment to their existing values, to their existing principles, to their existing competencies. So you get very deep with the behaviors that matter to that organization, and their managers and leaders can work on that. The frequency as well can vary. So with surveys, you do a yearly survey with pulses in between, for example. With 360s, they're far more targeted and far more flexible. Some of the organizations we work with might launch a 360 pre-leadership development program, and then once again after that leadership development program. Some other organizations might do a 360 for managers who are stepping up into a more senior role. And remember, it's not just for managers and leaders. We've recently created a 360 for non-managers, for those individuals who don't manage but want to self-develop. and are thinking of moving into a management role one day as well. So which one's more important? They're both important. They both complement each other. They both work well with each other. So employees surveys might be telling you how well our leaders and managers lead an organization, but 360 feedback is the tool that's going to give them the specifics on what to work on to improve that effectiveness. It's a self-development tool. That's what 360 is, development tool. They also complement each other in many other ways. For instance, an employee survey might steer you in the right direction of which individuals to invite when it comes to 360. Who needs that self-development and improvement in effectiveness? If you have 360 feedback and employee survey data, there's a lot of nice things you can do with both data sets, something we refer to as linkage analysis, where you can correlate 360 feedback data to employee survey data and find out how a manager's set of behaviors or how they lead that team actually leads to team engagement. So all this sounds good. Obviously, the theory, the ideal 360, fantastic. But you're probably asking the question, well, what does it look like on screen? How easy would it be for my managers or my organization and leaders to actually go through? And that's where I'll hand over to Gareth to steal the show and just take everyone through the platform, Gareth, and what it can do.
Thanks, Costa. No, I'm going to steal the show. I think the thinking is important behind here because my job is to turn what is concept and thinking into software and service and delivery. So hopefully in the last few months or so when we redeveloped this, we've captured everything that you wanted to take into this particular product. And it's been great fun working with you to help evolve it where we are right now. And I think that evolution is really important because we do need client feedback. We need experience of what it's actually like to use tools. So we are very keen to hear from existing clients how they've experienced using the 360 tool itself. And for new clients that are potentially going to take it on board, we're very interested in hearing down the line how you're experiencing it, because it's really important to us we deliver an excellent product that gets maximum use, because fundamentally it changes people's managerial experiences. So from our point of view, the most important thing is, first and foremost, we have to get across the simplicity. It has to be as easy to use as possible. I think Costa, you were saying earlier about data being critical. You're right. If we can't get raters feedback, then we're going to struggle to get any analysis. So making the process as easy as possible for people to get on board. So you're going to see the experience here of what it's like to sign up. You get an email across, then you're taken through to the process. You get to set your password. Relatively simple. We all experience this as we go through. We put two features in here that should make it a bit easier next time around, is that when you then come back and you're logging in again, you can either use Microsoft to log in if you're a 365 client, or if you have a Google account that's authenticated, you can use Google. And as you'd expect, there will be translatable versions of this, and the admin screen is equally as translatable. And therefore, when you log in using Google, you click on this, there's no need to remember a password. And hopefully at that point, it makes the whole process as easy as possible to get your raters to feedback to you. Talking of feedback, first of all, you come in here. You'll then, if you are partaking in feedback, you get this particular view. You come in, you've got two choices. You've got start my assessment or manage my raters. I'm going to look at managing my raters first and come back to start my assessment second. So the first and foremost, you're then presented with this screen here. And as you can see, there's line managers, the first one you do. But as we scroll down in a second, you'll see there'll be direct reports. There'll also be people that are peers and partners as well. So I'm going to go through the process of just completing for my line manager an invitation. So I'm going to put myself in there in this particular case. And then I'm going to go in there and I'm at this particular point, hit save. It'll then give me the option to send an email to my line manager. This email is customizable. So at this point, you can put something in there that may resonate more personally with the person you're asking for feedback, to say how important it is for you or what you're looking for them to look at from a particular aspect. So that gives you control around the sending of what the message might be out there. And hopefully that will improve feedback in terms of response times. And then you can also preview the view before you get and send it. And that allows you to get a sense of what it's going to be like. So once you sent that across, we'll then close that down. and close that one down too. And we'll look at the other views here. So at this particular point, you'll notice there are things in red. That's because we set thresholds. That's often a conversation between us and a client about what we believe to be the minimum threshold required. And Costa, you'll have a view on this as to what a good number is, because too few people, not enough data, too many, you might not get the process completed. But what's it actually like to complete the assessment? This is me completing my own assessment here. I've got themes on in the grey bars going across in the rows, questions that can go down there. I then read the question, take my time about it. I'm obviously doing this too quickly here. And then digest the information and select the category that applies to me at this particular point in time. We're conscious that people may need help along the way. Therefore, we have help and assistance throughout here. We've got information on our content hub, but also in the platform as well. There's 360 platform hub, and there's all the information we need in order to complete and hopefully complete the process. You may have noticed very briefly there's a support email there. What's one of the key things that we believe is differentiated for us is you can actually get support from real people. It's not necessarily, in this particular case, an AI or a chat. Is you can actually email us or talk to us directly about how to complete the assessment. We do realise that people are on the go, so these things do work on mobile devices as well. So on the left-hand side there, you'll see someone completing their assessment on their phone. And on the right-hand side here, you can see some of the reporting, which I'm about to go on to next. But just give you a flavour of what's on there. It's simple and clear and actionable. Right, if we then look at the reporting, so this will be probably a team effort, Costa and me, so I'll stop it halfway through. So what I've got here is actually when I first log on and come to my reports, I've now got to the point where everyone has fed back on me. So I've completed my own assessment and others have rated me or fed back on me to give me that insight into those blind spots. If we come back to your quadrant you had earlier, Costa, this is where it comes to the visual embodiment of it. And so therefore we have horizontally across the top my score, and then beneath that the average from my raters. But the average is always quite blunt in terms of an instrument. We then look at on the left hand side a spider diagram or radar chart that allows us to split out the direct reports, sorry, the your own score from your raters, and on the right hand side it then splits out all of your raters accordingly. And you'll see the different spider diagrams. And what this is meant to visualize and does visualize is the gap between my view and the perception of others. And that will then give me the insight, hopefully, and come back to your quadrant, Costa. That's where the crossover is.
And what I like, Gareth, sorry to interject now, but what I like about that right-hand side spidergram, so the one with all the relationship categories. So often, sometimes people think with 360, you walk away focusing on just the behavioral theme. But as we know, it allows you to focus on relationships. So what you've done there, for instance, you've deselected some and you've selected a couple of different relationships. It allows you to really hone in on that relationship and say, well, actually, the problem isn't the behavior itself, but it's with this group of people. It's with my peers, it's with my manager. And it allows you to get very specific and targeted with how you're going to action or focus on adapting or change that behavior. It's more about how I am in front of my peers rather than the whole group. So getting very specific, very tangible as much as possible is the key to successfully translating this data into something meaningful.
Thanks. And then, as you can see, we then scroll down, we then look at blind spots, areas to work on. And this is where my specific view is. So you can see, I'll just pause for a second there. My self scores are very high. I've clearly got a very good opinion of myself here versus what other people are thinking about me. And that again gives me a gap and says, actually, these are probably areas you need to consider working on. And on the other side, unfortunately, I seem to have fewer strengths. This is where people have rated me more highly than I have rated myself. Again, back to your quadrant that you were showing earlier, Costa. And that gives me some insight at a high level about what I want to look at and potentially improve. We can then dive into way more detail here. So we then look at all the scores by themes. So we then, across the themes, we can say, where are my potentially weaker or stronger perceptions are different versus my own? And I can then dive into that in a little more detail at a question level. I can start splitting out this in terms of by different theme and then by different result to understand where my strengths may lie and to dive into the real nitty-gritty in here of what the detail might be. And then we can also start looking at individual themes or strategic areas in more depth as well, visually. And of course, we can start looking into comments as well. But comments, they're interesting because you often find a lot of insight from the comments, but you get quite a lot of detail. And I'm going to come on to how we start to simplify some of that detail in a minute, using AI to explain how we can make it a bit easier to digest. Because yes, it's really important to dive into the detail of the comments, but maybe first and foremost, we need to have some sort of basic analysis here. So what we currently have now is a Gen AI, our brand called Prism, running through and saying, okay, pulling out what are my key strengths, what are my areas for improvement, and giving me a simple summary, same for comments, and then thinking about suggested actions. Now, with all AI, it's never the same as using a consultant. This is just a thought starter, allows us to step off in a particular direction. And you may have noticed at the top there was an option to book a consultant's time. I think, Costa, what we found is actually we need to have that blend of AI to help start the process, but then spending time with people like you and from your team to interpret the results and then take it further forward.
Yeah, I agree. Prism really helps. It gives a strong steer and direction. We found it useful. The people we're helping found it useful. The conversations we have afterwards really allows us to dig in deeper. Well, what's leading to those behaviors? What's causing that? What some of the motivations, be it conscious or unconscious, voluntary or involuntary. So the complement of the two have so far worked well together in the sessions we've had.
Brilliant. Thanks. So yeah, as you can sort of see there. Now, if I just move on to the next area, which is actually we also need to make it easy to administer as well. So you're going to look at a heat map here. This is someone who's managed to conduct a huge amount of 360s, so much so that A's, as in the A's, almost taking the entire screen. What's interesting about this, it leans as a team person or team manager or team leader or someone from an HR perspective, you get an understanding. I mean, Costa, you have much more insight about this than I do, an understanding of how the blend of strength is amongst the team and amongst the group. So they can then look at these different scores here by heat map and relative performance versus each other.
Yeah, and what I love about, sorry, Gareth, just responding to a question, a valid point from the chat box, which I'll come back to. But with the heat map, something I love is, yes, you focus on the individual, but also if you put a group of leaders or managers through, let's say they're at the same level or same department or same team, it allows you to spot trends and patterns by the whole group. So you'll see, well, actually, this particular theme or behavior, it's a challenge for everyone across this level. And it allows you, if you were in HR, for instance, to implement something that will help address that challenge. So yes, every individual walks away with their individual development, but from a HR perspective, you'll walk away with something that's much wider and broader. You can focus on an entire group or cohort.
Yeah, and as you can see here, you can then start breaking out that information and say, does it make a difference by location or whether there's anything else, demographics, you can play around with it to understand whether there's any biases in there worth looking at. You can then split out that by different rate types as well. And of course, you can view not just the absolute numbers, but the deltas. And we can then export as well. So if I just dive into a particular individual's report here. So this is what they will receive having gone through the process, as you've seen already. But I just want to stress it from an admin perspective. There's 2 or 3 controls that we have in here that allow us to potentially switch off analysis if we think the analysis isn't quite right. So we have some control over that. And we have the option to switch off actions. We also have an intercept button, effectively, that says, I want to review this report first and make sure it's okay and there's nothing in here that might spook or concern or worry about the person, and then take a view whether I can then release it. So there's a catch there, effectively, from an HR control perspective. Then we look at you adding users. It's a simple process. We have a directory in there and we have the option to bulk import. You also have the option to hook into an HRIS and move the data across. An HR system automatically will then synchronize the data with our platform, allowing easy use and addition of users. You've got the option to manage cohorts as well. And as you can see, it's simple and quick and easy control against this. You can create a new cohort, pick a new questionnaire, and get the sense of how the system can work. And of course, it does work in multiple languages as well, not just English. It's a multilingual system across the way. So it's important to stress that. You can also, as an admin user, it's got to be easy for people. And sometimes if people find it hard to find the time to ask raters, you can initiate that process for them. And then you can also potentially invite people that they don't know have been invited. So there is an option there to take control and add raters on behalf of someone that may prove useful. And here you can see me going through the process here of adding a rater, picking whether they're a peer or colleague, sending the email, and then it goes from there. But that gives you a sense of the control of the system and how it works. And as I said beforehand, we can randomly switch into French. But then go and say, well, where next? If we look at where are we trying to take this particular platform in the view, as I said, we have just delivered the HRIS integration that is now in play and working. We're now going to move across and extend Prism to summarize the team results. So we're looking at that heat map and how we can analyze and look at the Gen AI, applying analysis against that and providing pattern recognition against all those different data sets to help us get a clearer view. We're also going to extend the heat map functionality to allow us to view from a team perspective. And we're also eventually going to move into this world here by the end of the year of bringing the data sets from the EX platform and the 360 platform together, because these things work in essence as a very much a partnership. So hopefully that gives you a flavor of what we've been up to. And Costa, I'm going to let you do the last.
Yes, thank you, Gareth. And we love the platform, and I love it, and it's very helpful and insightful in many ways, as Gareth showed you. But we know it's not the only part of an equation, and feedback is a loop. 360 is a feedback loop as well. So starting stage one, identifying the right people, either getting that insight from employee surveys or something going on internally, making sure you've got the right objective in place, launching it, briefing people, getting the right nominations. It's stage 2, stage 3, then of course analyzing, making that as easy as possible. As we know, managers often feel like that squeezed middle. How do we make sure we get that insight in a digestible format? Stage 4 then moves on to those coaching sessions, those guides, what happens afterwards at an individual level and the group level as well, making sure there's something in place for afterwards, followed by the actual execution of implementing that change, either me as an individual, manager or leader, or HR, for instance, putting something in place to touch on those themes that were low scoring, and then starting the process again to measure what the improvements have been. There are different approaches to what you do afterwards, but there has to be something. So, for instance, if we look at Royal Ballet and Opera, a number of different leaders, if I recall correctly, going through 360, aligning it to a leadership development program, they did one-to-one coach. We're still doing them currently, one-to-one coaching sessions. If you look at PRS for music, and this goes back to a point made by someone around sometimes nothing really happens, and I do agree with that challenge, but what we saw with PRS for music was we ran a one-to-one coaching session. We summed up at the end, we analyzed, we concluded what the actions were going to be. We took a 10-minute break. We were then joined by that person's manager and a HR VP. We laid everything out on the table, and we agreed a plan of moving forward. And that was great. Commitment from all around. That worked really, really well. Then if you look at Active Care Group, newly formed executive team. So we're running a group coaching session to utilize the group dynamic. And if you look at Sport England, we're looking at upskilling people to go off and coach. So we're conducting a trainer session. So a variety of approaches you can take. Each organization can be different. And before we finish off, just to invite everyone, for those who are currently not using our platform, we would love for you to give this a try. We're offering 5 free licenses. I think you can scan this, or something will be coming your way afterwards. We'll chat through, but please do go for it. And for those that already use our platform, we have not forgotten you and will not leave you hanging. We are offering free coaching sessions. So think about 3 individuals you think, actually, we've got these licenses. I've got a few individuals in mind who could benefit from this. Please get in touch. It'll be myself or colleague, and we'll be running these sessions. And lastly, we've got a couple more webinars coming up. So in a month's time, that's end of March roughly, this is all about how to make an employee survey count. So again, translating data into raw action. How do you make that tangible? And we've got one in May, which is about the future of AI-powered employee insights and Prism 2.0. So sounds impressive, will be impressive. And I think it's you, Gareth, doing that one, but you'll be back on here. Yep. And lastly, and as per usual with our webinars, with everyone who attended, each attendant, we plant a tree. So somewhere out there, there'll be a tree with your name on it, figuratively speaking, not literally. So thank you for attending. And the more people that join, the more trees we can plant. So we hope to see you again in a month's time. Thank you, and hope to speak to you soon.
Thanks all.